Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. This file is being recorded for the January 2024 edition of Socialism for All, and it's an audiobook and discussion of the proletarian class and the proletarian party concerning paragraph 1 of the party rules by Stalin from 1905. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe, and consider supporting on Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee at patreon.com/socialismforall or buymeacoffee.com/socialismforall. There are links to Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee in the video description. So this piece dates from January 1st, 1905. The source is Joseph Stalin Works, Volume 1, November 1901 to April 1907, published by Foreign Languages Publishing House, Moscow, 1954. HTML transcription and markup by Salil Sen for the Marxists Internet Archive, 2008, and it is in the public domain at the Marxists Internet Archive, marxists.org. Thanks as usual to MIA for hosting this and thousands of other free Marxist texts. Let's begin. The time when people boldly proclaimed Russia, one and indivisible, has gone. Today, even a child knows that there's no such thing as Russia, one and indivisible, that Russia long ago split up into two opposite classes, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Today, it is no secret to anyone that the struggle between these two classes has become the axis around which our contemporary life revolves. Nevertheless, until recently it was difficult to notice all this, the reason being that hitherto we saw only individual groups in the arena of the struggle, for it was only individual groups in individual towns and parts of the country that waged the struggle, while the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, as classes, were not easily discernible. But now towns and districts have united. Various groups of the proletariat have joined hands. Joint strikes and demonstrations have broken out, and before us has unfolded the magnificent picture of the struggle between the two Russias, bourgeois Russia and proletarian Russia. Two big armies have entered the arena, the army of proletarians and the army of the bourgeoisie, and the struggle between these two armies embraces the whole of our social life. Since an army cannot operate without leaders, and since every army has a vanguard which marches at its head and lights up its path, it's obvious that with these armies there had to appear corresponding groups of leaders, corresponding parties, as they're usually called. Thus, the picture presents the following scene. On the one side there is the bourgeois army, headed by the Liberal Party. On the other, there is the proletarian army, headed by the Social Democratic Party. Each army, in its class struggle, is led by its own party. And just a quick comment there, Social Democratic Party is what they called the Marxist Party at that time. They had not had the irrevocable split between what we today call Social Democrats or Reformists and what we would today call Communists. There's also a note from Stalin, we do not mention the other parties in Russia because there's no need to deal with them in examining the questions under discussion. Continuing. We have mentioned all this in order to compare the proletarian party with the proletarian class, and thus briefly to bring out the general features of the party. The foregoing makes it sufficiently clear that the proletarian party, being a fighting group of leaders, must, firstly, be considerably smaller than the proletarian class with respect to membership. Secondly, it must be superior to the proletarian class with respect to its understanding and its experience. And thirdly, it must be a united organization. In our opinion, what has been said needs no proof, for it's self-evident that so long as the capitalist system exists, with its inevitably attendant poverty, backwardness of the masses, the proletariat as a whole cannot rise to the desired level of class consciousness, and consequently there must be a group of class-conscious leaders to enlighten the proletarian army in the spirit of socialism, to unite and lead it in its struggle. It is also clear that a party which is set out to lead the fighting proletariat must not be a chance conglomeration of individuals, but a united, centralized organization, so that its activities can be directed according to a single plan. Such in brief are the general features of our party. Bearing all this in mind, let us pass to the main question. Whom can we call a party member? Paragraph 1 of the party rules, which is the subject of the present article, deals with precisely this question. So, let us examine this question. Whom then can we call a member of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party? i.e., what are the duties of a party member? Our party is a social democratic party. This means that it has its own program, which states the immediate and the ultimate aims of the movement, its own tactics, which means its methods of struggle, and its own organizational principle or form of association. Unity of programmatic, tactical, and organizational views is the basis on which our party is built. Only the unity of these views can unite the party members in one centralized party. If unity of views collapses, the party collapses. Consequently, only one who fully accepts the party's program, tactics, and organizational principles can be called a party member. Only one who has adequately studied and has fully accepted our party's programmatic, tactical, and organizational views can be in the ranks of our party, and thereby in the ranks of the leaders of the proletarian army. But is it enough for a party member merely to accept the party's program, tactics, and organizational views? Can a person like that be regarded as a true leader of the proletarian army? Of course not. In the first place, everybody knows that there are plenty of windbags in the world who would readily, quote, accept the party's program, tactics, and organizational views, but who are incapable of being anything else than windbags. It would be a desecration of the party's holy of holies to call a windbag like that a party member, that is, a leader of the proletarian army. Moreover, our party is not a school of philosophy or a religious sect. Is not our party a fighting party? Since it is it not self-evident that our party will not be satisfied with a platonic acceptance of its program, tactics, and organizational views? That it will undoubtedly demand that its members should apply the views that they have accepted. Hence, whoever wants to be a member of our party cannot rest content with merely accepting our party's programmatic, tactical, and organizational views, but must set about applying these views, putting them into effect. But what does applying the party's views mean for a party member? When can they apply these views? Only when they are fighting, when they are marching with the whole party at the head of the proletarian army. Can the struggle be waged by solitary, scattered individuals? Certainly not. On the contrary, people first unite, then they organize, and only then do they go into battle. If that is not done, all struggle is fruitless. Clearly then, the party members too will be able to fight and consequently apply the party's views, only if they unite in a compact organization. It is also clear that the more compact the organization in which the party members unite, the better they will be able to fight, and consequently, the more fully they will apply the party's program, tactics, and organizational views. And it is not for nothing that our party is called an organization of leaders, and not a conglomeration of individuals. And if our party is an organization of leaders, it is obvious that only those can be regarded as members of this party, of this organization, who work in this organization, and therefore deem it their duty to merge their wishes with the wishes of the party and to act in unison with the party. Hence, to be a party member, one must apply the party's program, tactics, and organizational views. To apply the party's views, one must fight for them, and to fight for these views, one must work in a party organization, work in unison with the party. Clearly, to be a party member, one must belong to one of the party organizations. And as a footnote, just as every complex organism is made up of an incalculable number of extremely simple organisms, so our party, being a complex and general organization, is made up of numerous district and local bodies called party organizations, provided that they have been endorsed by the party congress or the central committee. As you see, not only committees are called party organizations. To direct the activities of these organizations according to a single plan, there is a central committee, through which these local party organizations constitute one large, centralized organization. Only when we join one of the party organizations and thus merge our personal interests with the party's interests can we become party members, and consequently, real leaders of the proletarian army. If our party is not a conglomeration of individual windbags, but an organization of leaders which, through its central committee, is worthily leading the proletarian army forward, then all that has been said above is self-evident. The following must also be noted. Up till now, our party has resembled a hospitable patriarchal family, ready to take in all who sympathize. But now that our party has become a centralized organization, it has thrown off its patriarchal aspect, and has become in all respects like a fortress, the gates of which are opened only to those who are worthy, and that is of great importance to us. At a time when the autocracy is trying to corrupt the class consciousness of the proletariat with trade unionism, nationalism, clericalism, and the like, and when, on the other hand, the liberal intelligentsia is persistently striving to kill the political independence of the proletariat and to impose its tutelage upon it, at such a time we must be extremely vigilant and never forget that our party is a fortress, the gates of which are opened only to those who have been tested. We have ascertained two essential conditions of party membership: acceptance of the program and work in a party organization. If to these we add a third condition, namely that a party member must render the party financial support, then we shall have all the conditions that give one the right to the title of party member. Hence, a member of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party is one who accepts the program of this party, renders the party financial support, and works in one of the party organizations. That is how paragraph 1 of the party rules, drafted by Comrade Lenin, footnote, Lenin is the outstanding theoretician and practical leader of revolutionary social democracy, was formulated. The formula, as you can see, springs entirely from the view that our party is a centralized organization and not a conglomeration of individuals. Therein lies the supreme merit of this formula. But it appears that some comrades reject Lenin's formula on the grounds that it is, quote, narrow and, quote, inconvenient, and then they propose their own formula, which it must be supposed is neither narrow nor inconvenient. We are referring to Martov's formula, which we shall now analyze. And footnote, Martov was one of the editors of Iskra, The Spark, a Marxist newsletter. Martov's formula is, quote, a member of the RSDLP is one who accepts its program, supports the party financially, and renders it regular personal assistance under the direction of one of its organizations, unquote. As you see, this formula omits the third essential condition of party membership, namely, the duty of party members to work in one of the party organizations. It appears that Martov regards this definite and essential condition as superfluous, and in his formula, he has substituted for it the nebulous and dubious personal assistance under the direction of one of the party organizations. It appears then that one can be a member of the party without belonging to any party organization, a fine, quote, party to be sure, and without feeling obliged to submit to the party's will, fine party discipline to be sure. Well, and how can the party, quote, regularly direct persons who do not belong to any party organization, and consequently do not feel absolutely obliged to submit to party discipline? That is the question that shatters Martov's formula of paragraph 1 of the party rules, and it is answered in masterly fashion in Lenin's formula, inasmuch as the latter definitely stipulates that a third and indispensable condition of party membership is that one must work in a party organization. All we have to do is to throw out of Martov's formula the nebulous and meaningless personal assistance under the direction of one of the party organizations. With this condition eliminated, there remain only two conditions in Martov's formula: acceptance of the program and financial support, which by themselves are utterly worthless, since any windbag can, quote, accept the party program and support the party financially. That does not in the least entitle them to party membership. A, quote, convenient formula, we must say. We say that real party members cannot possibly rest content with merely accepting the party program, but must without fail strive to apply the program they've accepted. Martov answers, you're too strict, for it's not so very necessary for a party member to apply the program they've accepted once they're willing to render the party financial support, etc. It looks as though Martov is sorry for certain windbag, quote, social democrats, and does not want to close the party's doors to them. We say further that inasmuch as the application of the program entails fighting, and that it is impossible to fight without unity, it is the duty of every prospective party member to join one of the party organizations, merge their wishes with those of the party, and, in unison with the party, lead the fighting proletarian army, i.e., they must organize in the well-formed detachments of a centralized party. To this, Martov answers, it's not so very necessary for party members to organize in well-formed detachments, to unite in organizations. Fighting single-handed is good enough. What then is our party, we ask? A chance conglomeration of individuals, or a united organization of leaders? And if it is an organization of leaders, can we regard as a member one who does not belong to it, and consequently does not consider it their bounden duty to submit to its discipline? Martov answers that the party is not an organization, or rather, that the party is an unorganized organization. Fine, quote, centralism to be sure. Evidently, in Martov's opinion, our party is not a centralized organization, but a conglomeration of local organizations and individual, quote, social democrats who have accepted our party program, etc. But if our party is not a centralized organization, it will not be a fortress, the gates of which can be opened only for those who have been tested. And indeed, to Martov, as is evident from his formula, the party is not a fortress, but a banquet, which every sympathizer can freely attend. A little knowledge, an equal amount of sympathy, a little financial support, and there you are. You have full right to count as a party member. Don't listen, cries Martov, to cheer up the frightened, quote, party members. Don't listen to those people who maintain that a party member must belong to one of the party organizations and thus subordinate their wishes to the wishes of the party. In the first place, it's hard for a person to accept these conditions. It's no joke to subordinate your wishes to those of the party. And secondly, as I've already pointed out in my explanation, the opinion of those people is mistaken. And so, gentlemen, you're welcome to the banquet. It looks as though Martov is sorry for certain professors and high school students who are loath to subordinate their wishes to the wishes of the party, and so he's forcing a breach in our party fortress through which these estimable gentlemen may smuggle into our party. He's opening the door to opportunism, and this at a time when thousands of enemies are assailing the class consciousness of the proletariat. But that's not all. The point is that Martov's dubious formula makes it possible for opportunism to arise in our party from another side. Martov's formula, as we know, refers only to the acceptance of the program. About tactics and organization, it contains not a word, and yet unity of organizational and tactical views is no less essential for party unity than unity of programmatic views. We may be told that nothing is said about this even in Comrade Lenin's formula. True, but there's no need to say anything about it in Comrade Lenin's formula. It is not self-evident that one who works in a party organization, and consequently fights in unison with the party and submits to party discipline, cannot pursue tactics and organizational principles other than the party's tactics and the party's organizational principles. But what would you say of a, quote, party member who has accepted the party program but does not belong to any party organization? What guarantee is there that such a, quote, member's tactics and organizational views will be those of the party and not some other? That is what Martov's formula fails to explain. As a result of Martov's formula, we would have a strange, quote, party whose, quote, members subscribe to the same program. That is questionable, but differ in their tactical and organizational views. What ideal variety? In what way will our party differ from a banquet? There is just one question we should like to ask. What are we to do with the ideological and practical centralism that was handed down to us by the Second Party Congress and which is radically contradicted by Martov's formula? Throw it overboard? If it comes to making a choice, it will undoubtedly be more correct to throw Martov's formula overboard. Such is the absurd formula Martov presents to us in opposition to Comrade Lenin's formula. We are of the opinion that the decision of the Second Party Congress, which adopted Martov's formula, was the result of thoughtlessness, and we hope that the Third Party Congress will not fail to rectify the blunder of the Second Congress and adopt Comrade Lenin's formula. We shall briefly recapitulate. The proletarian army entered the arena of the struggle. Since every army must have a vanguard, this army also had to have such a vanguard. Hence the appearance of a group of proletarian leaders, the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party. As the vanguard of a definite army, this party must firstly be armed with its own program, tactics, and organizational principle. And secondly, it must be a united organization. To the question, who can be called a member of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party? This party can have only one answer, one who accepts the party program, supports the party financially, and works in one of the party organizations. It is this obvious truth that Comrade Lenin has expressed in his splendid formula. And that's the end of the audiobook. So this was a pretty brief one, but I think a really powerful, important, and to-the-point article. For me, it raised a number of thoughts. First, on the subject of the vanguard, this is something that it seems to me like the US left really struggles with. Because the US left, and the US proletariat as a whole, is really burdened, unduly influenced by petty bourgeois ideology, where people who have actual proletarian class standings and actual proletarian relations to the means of production are going about imitating the views and values of a capitalist, with the pursuit of property and, above all else, the individualism, just the focus on the individual. Consequently, this gets manifested as anarchism, this sort of hybrid between wanting to be anti-capitalist, but also not being able or ready or whatever willing to give up that individualist, self-centered viewpoint. So anarchists looking at Marxist discipline in organizing a party and abiding by democratic centralism, carrying out views that you may have voted against personally, in other words, the will of the individual, not trumping the will of the majority or however the party has set up the decision-making, and also being really confused about the need for a vanguard and what this means. To clear up any confusion, the vanguard and the masses are two relative terms. So you have the working class, that's a thing that exists, and it has a certain level of class consciousness, on average, but then even within it, there are sort of different gradients. There's the very backward masses that have almost no class consciousness, basically think that they're the bourgeoisie and that the bourgeoisie are acting, that they're united in interest with them. Then there's the middle masses who have more of a moderate amount of class consciousness, then the advanced masses, and then the vanguard. And you could break these up into like 30, 30, 30, and 10 in terms of percentages. Now, don't quote me on that. That's just sort of, a loose breakdown. But if we're considering the vanguard to be the most educated, most class conscious, educated, of course, in terms of Marxism, dialectical materialism applied to historical materialism, political economics, strike tactics, etc. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, because there's always going to be a portion of the working class that is just sort of a cut above, that goes that extra mile, that has that intense level of class consciousness and really studies it. So that vanguard, again, it's just relative to the rest of the working class. There's not like an absolute standard for what constitutes a vanguard. It's relative. It's the most class conscious sort of tip of the spear. Unless you're expecting the entire working class, every member of the working class, to be at the same level of class consciousness, then you would expect some kind of gradient at least. So then after the vanguard, again, are the advanced masses, which is that portion of the masses that the vanguard can probably work most closely with in directing. Again, Stalin referring to that fighting proletariat. That's what we're talking about. Not every member of the advanced masses is like a pure leader, but they do get it and they're ready for some kind of action. As far as the middle masses, you can at least bring them into some kind of passive support. And then as far as the backward masses, probably you can't really win them over. They're just still tailing the bourgeoisie, but you can at least hope to contain them and prevent them from doing any internal wrecking from within the class. So anarchists look at this idea of a vanguard and they think that it's some kind of Blancist conspiracy. In fact, you can find many anarchists accusing Leninists of Blanchism, which is something that Engels and Lenin both wrote extensive amounts criticizing. Blanchism is named after Blanqui, one of the participants in the Paris Commune, who after the Commune was defeated, retreated, and then tried to reorganize a sort of revolutionary conspiracy with just a small band of people that was going to reignite the revolution. But unfortunately, Blanqui did not realize the revolution is made by the masses, not by a small conspiracy of people. So if that historical moment is gone and the masses are not in that mood and situation, then you can do whatever you want. It's not going to excite the masses to revolution. Lenin knew this well. Any Marxist-Leninist can tell you this as well. But anarchists, again, just not grasping the need to work within a party and sort of lashing out against it at any chance that they get and in any way that they can, they accuse the party discipline, that democratic centralism, of being a kind of middle-class conspiracy of would-be revolutionaries that are trying to be Blancist and just conjure up a revolution out of thin air. No Marxist-Leninist thinks that way. All right, so that's point one. Point two is that this is a YouTube channel, as you may know. Well, at least we started on YouTube. Actually, we started on Facebook. Then we opened up a YouTube where I wanted to do some readings and just sort of vent some political thoughts. Here we are 4 years later. And now we're also on Spotify, Patreon, SoundCloud, Substack, etc. But the point is this is a media channel, not an organization. I've said this in the live streams before because sometimes people ask, do you have a party that you're starting or anything like that? The answer is definitely no. What we're trying to do here is broad-based, public-facing agitation and education, which some of it is meant more specifically for a bit more educated communists who are in the vanguard, and some of it is meant more for people on just like a very basic level of understanding who might be sort of Marxism curious. But to my mind, that's what you can do with a YouTube page or, media outlet in general. You can do that kind of broad-based agitation and education, maybe refine some of it for specific audiences, but it is not an organization. But people suggest sometimes, well, why don't you form a party and maybe you can go with some like-minded other content creators and do that. And let me just say, just because somebody might be good at doing videos or podcasts or whatever does not mean they have any leadership or organizational abilities. So first of all, don't confuse those two. But also, as I was reading this, the quote stood out to me where Stalin says, quote, "If our party is not a conglomeration of individual windbags, but an organization of leaders which through its central committee is worthily leading the proletarian army forward, then all that has been said above is self-evident." Well, when I think of sort of a network of content creators I think conglomeration of individual windbags is a more or less perfect phrase, sums it up really nicely. As the social media saying goes, don't get your politics from streamers, and that's why I try to base what we do in actual readings, in actual studies. So it's not just me blathering about my opinion that I'm just making up out of whole cloth. Now, sometimes I do just talk about my personal opinion about something or whatever, but I try to separate those two out, and again, do at least 50% of the content grounded in something real. Why? Because what I would like to see is, I think the left needs a shot in the arm to really up its game. I don't think that the revolution is going to be coordinated through YouTube. That sort of makes me laugh in a very sad way. But what I do think is that for people, spending time on their commute or whatever to listen to The State and Revolution, or Value, Price, and Profit, or a manual on how to organize a labor union in your workplace or industry, and then taking that knowledge and those thoughts and that perspective and that education that you got with you as you go forward into your day-to-day life in the real world, and as you network with your local left in your city, or if you're in a more rural place in your region or statewide organization. I think that that may lead to some improvement in the quality of real-world struggle, the overall level of class consciousness, and so on. It is true that many communist parties have started out as sort of book clubs, but of course they don't stay that way for all the reasons that Stalin laid out in this short but again very powerful essay. The change from the one thing into the other is something that you all have to figure out. I can give you some readings, I can give you some food for thought, I can help you to get through the readings that your party is requiring you to study, but this is not a party in and of itself. So I do really want people to differentiate between a Twitch chat comment section or a Discord server and an actual party. Those are totally different things. That's not to say that I don't love my comrades who I've been DMing with for years and who show up in the comments regularly or show up to the S4A live streams when we do them. You are absolutely part of the workings of this sort of video library that we've got going on. You're part of what keeps my morale up, and people send me suggestions all the time. Somebody in the comments just today was saying, you picked the best readings, and I'm going to reply to that person saying, I oftentimes have help. I'm either reading from a party syllabus or, required reading list, or somebody DMs me, hey, have you seen this reading? It goes along with what you were saying in one of the recent videos. And I go, wow. And I'd say, at least a third of the readings were suggested in that way. But that kind of loose contact is more of what Stalin was calling the banquet, and people who haven't formally committed in some way to that work. Again, not to say that these people aren't committed to some kind of work elsewhere in their life, but just that is not the locus of it. Okay, so if that's what a party is not, in my opinion, as far as the current context of things, well, then what are some good additional readings that are also on this topic? Well, that's something that we do here, and that's something I can point out to you. So I would point out Arling Aktivista, Activist Study by the Communist Party of the Philippines. We have that on the channel. It's about 2 hours long, and it's basically the things that a new party member needs to know about how the party works and how people are expected to do their work within the party. And some other readings that you might check out are Lenin's Freedom to Criticize and Unity of Action, which is about democratic centralism, Stalin's Against Vulgarizing the Slogan of Self-Criticism, and Combat Liberalism, and On Correcting Mistaken Ideas in the Party by Mao, among other readings on this topic, which is really important to understand if you're trying to form your own group, which might have aspirations of becoming a party. I don't think that we have the party that we need right now, but I think that as class consciousness grows, especially as it has been growing consistently in the post-2008 environment, I think it's going to get another big boost because there's probably going to be another 2008 type event in the next 1 to 3 years. And I posted a couple of videos on that topic that are more from investment analytics type channels, so they're more bourgeois or petty bourgeois in their politics. But economic analysis is economic analysis. Wherever you get data from, as long as the data are valid, then, it is what it is. Somebody actually posted in the comments where I was sharing some of these in the community tab. They were like, what does this have to do with communism? They're just telling you that now is not a good time to invest. And it's like, if you didn't see the connection between the massive economic crash, which really derailed capitalism's whole narrative that we're at the end of history, class struggle is over, capitalism, there's no alternative, etc., The crash of 2008, after that big bubble of 05, 06, 07, where many people lost their houses, and it was just this huge global crisis, the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis. If you can't connect how that created massive unrest and widespread questioning of this economic order, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we went after 2008 from a roughly 10-year period, or a little bit shorter than 10 years, where all anybody could talk about for like at least 7 or 8 years was terrorism. Well, it turned on a dime to like nobody talked about terrorism at all anymore, and everything was the economy, the economy, the economy. And we saw things like Occupy Wall Street pop up. I think that these were early stabs at the US left trying to regroup and become explicitly opposed to capitalism as a system, which was really unthinkable a few decades prior to that. So if you keep having events like this, of course it matters. Anyway, getting carried away. But yeah, I hope that a party does form. I think that there is a lot more interest in this type of material than there was 10 or 15 years ago for sure. And it's really just up to us, those of us who do have the class consciousness and are committed to studying and do feel that they have the potential to become part of that organized fighting group of leaders. Well, I would like to do everything that I can to encourage that. So that's where this is coming from. What do you think? Do you have other readings, other thoughts that you'd like to suggest or develop, or just continue the discussion down in the comments section below? You do that and we'll meet you there. In the meantime, thanks for listening, and thanks to the current patrons and Buy Me a Coffee supporters whose names are on the screen. This channel is non-commercial. We don't run ads or do sponsorship, so it is viewer supported. That level of support has been growing over the years. We love to see that. It's enabled me to make long-term plans for this channel and commit on an extended basis to it. If you like this channel, thank me, but also thank a patron or Buy Me a Coffee supporter, and consider becoming one yourself. Also, engagement counts, so like, share, subscribe. That helps to boost this video and this channel and makes it easier for other people thinking about these same kind of questions to stumble across this content. Thanks again, and we will see you in the next video.